At the family barbecue, my fiancée clinked her glass and said, "To the one who always shows up with his kids, borrowing space and still trying to look important." Her family laughed. I lifted my drink and said, "To the woman who just lost the transfer covering your car payment." The silence after that toast was beautiful. She'd rehearsed it. That's what I keep coming back to. You don't produce a sentence like that on instinct. You write it. You say it to yourself in the car. You work out the pauses. She'd been holding that toast in her pocket, like a folded receipt, waiting for the right crowd, the right moment, the right amount of white wine, and the right number of glasses around her. And when she stood up and clinked her glass and smiled at her mother first, before she even started speaking, I knew. Something in me knew before the words came out. She said it. Her family laughed. Not all of them, but enough. And I lifted my drink, and I looked her in the eye, and I said, "To the woman who just lost the transfer covering her car payment." You could hear a spatula drop, but let me take you back. Because you need the full picture. You need to understand who I was before that backyard and what I'd been carrying into it every single month for almost 2 years. My name is Dorian. I'm 37 years old. I live in Louisville, Kentucky, which is a city that will surprise you if you've never been, has a slower heartbeat than you'd expect, and very good food, which matters to me. I'm a veterinarian. Mixed practice? I do small animals mostly, but I still take large animal calls because I grew up around horses and I can't quite let that go. I've been practicing for 12 years. I own a third of a clinic on the east side of town. 2 other vets, 4 techs, the best receptionist in the state of Kentucky. A waiting room that always smells faintly of antiseptic and dog anxiety. I make about $134,000 a year. I'm proud of that. I'm not flashy about it, but I'm proud. I have 1 daughter, Cora. She's 8, sharp kid. The kind of 8-year-old who asks follow-up questions and remembers what you said 2 weeks ago and holds you accountable. Her mom and I co-parent well. We're not friends exactly, but we're not enemies. And Cora knows she's loved from both sides, which is all that actually matters. The part of my financial situation that matters for this story. I am stable, reliably, consistently stable. And in this particular family, Simone's family, that made me a resource more than a person, for longer than I want to admit. Simone Hayes, 32 years old when we met. She taught kindergarten. She had a laugh that started before you even finished the joke, like she trusted you already. We met at a fundraiser for the animal shelter, where I volunteer twice a month. She was there with a friend. I was there wrangling a rescue rabbit for photos. And she walked over and said, "Is that rabbit okay, or is he doing what I think he's doing right now?" And I said, "He's doing exactly what you think he's doing, and I apologize." And that was it. That was the whole beginning of us. First 6 months, extraordinary. She was warm and curious, and she actually listened when I talked about work. Not politely, actually. She asked what large animal practice felt like different from small animal. She remembered the name of a dog I mentioned in passing 3 weeks earlier. She was present in a way I wasn't used to. Then I met her family. Her mother, Linda Hayes, 63 years old, retired office manager, which is a job title that tells you everything about a certain kind of personality. Someone who ran a room for 30 years through pure organizational authority and never really learned to stop. Linda was polished, never impolite, always had a reason that wasn't the real reason. She once told me that Cora was a lot of personality for such a small person. And I smiled and said thank you, because it took me 4 days to realize it wasn't a compliment. Simone's brother, Wade, 28. The kind of 28 that still surprises people. As in, people are still surprised that he's 28 and doing the things he's doing, which were mostly not finishing things, not finishing the business degree, not finishing the certification program, not finishing his lease obligations, which is how he ended up back in Linda's house, with what the family described as figuring things out. Wade wasn't malicious. That would have been easier. He was just permanently on the verge of a next step that never quite happened. And Simone's grandmother, Dot, 81 years old. Dot Hayes, who was small and had the posture of someone who'd grown up being told to stand up straight and had never once considered stopping. Dot said what she meant, didn't perform anything. Called me Dorian from the first meeting. No nicknames, no honey, no softening, just my full name, which meant she was taking me seriously. I liked her immediately. Dot is important later. Here is how the financial slide started. Simone and I had been together for 8 months when she mentioned, carefully, that she'd been carrying some credit card debt from a period when she was student teaching, which paid almost nothing. And it had accumulated $12,000. She'd been managing it, minimum payments, but the interest was eating her alive, and she was embarrassed about it. And I could hear that embarrassment in how she said it. And I told her not to be embarrassed. Let me just pay it off, I said. We're building something together. Start clean. She cried a little, said she'd pay me back. I told her not to worry about it. She didn't pay me back. That's not a criticism exactly. It just became one of those things. It joined the invisible pile of things we didn't talk about. Then, 6 months later, we were engaged by now. She'd moved into my house. Cora adored her. Linda called with a situation. Wade needed his security deposit for a new apartment. He was finally moving out, finally getting his own place. This was a huge step for him. The deposit was $1,750. Could we help bridge it? Just temporarily. He'd pay it back within 60 days. I handed Simone an envelope with $1,750 cash. She brought it to Linda's. Wade did not move into the new apartment. The roommate situation fell through. The $1,750 absorbed into something I never fully understood. 60 days passed. Nobody mentioned it. I mentioned it once to Simone quietly. He's trying, she said. He's been having a rough time. I let it go. Then it was the car insurance. Linda's, which had lapsed because she'd had a rough month. Something about her fixed income and a medical bill. And it wasn't a lot, Dorian. Just a few months of coverage, 3 months at $214 a month. Could we just front it until her pension adjusted? We could. We did. $642. Transferred directly to the insurance company. Then Wade's phone bill, which had been suspended, which meant Linda couldn't reach him, which was a safety issue, according to Linda. Then Simone's dental work, which her insurance didn't fully cover. $890 out of pocket. And I was happy to cover that one. I genuinely was, because her tooth hurt, and I'm not a monster. Then the family emergency fund. This was Linda's idea. She'd read something, or seen something, or a friend had told her, about families keeping a shared emergency fund, and wouldn't it make sense for us to contribute since we were part of the family now and doing well? The amount she suggested was $400 a month. I want to pause here so you can sit with that. She pitched me a subscription to her family. Simone and I talked about it. Or I talked and Simone said, I understand your concern, in a tone of voice that meant she'd already decided. We contributed $300 a month. I told myself it was temporary. I told myself this was what joining a family sometimes looked like. I told myself I was being generous and not a pushover. Nobody told me that if you always say yes, people stop seeing it as generosity. They start seeing it as your function. For 14 months, I transferred $300 every first of the month to Linda's emergency fund. That is $4,200. The emergencies that fund addressed included a new kitchen faucet, Wade's parking tickets, plural, and one weekend trip Linda took with her book club to Lexington that I only found out about because Simone accidentally mentioned it and then immediately changed the subject. I said nothing. I sat with it. I processed it. I told myself it wasn't my money once it was given, which is technically true, and also one of the most useful lies a generous person can tell themselves. Something was building. I just hadn't named it yet. The barbecue was the last Saturday of July, Linda's backyard. Every year, big production, fairy lights, strung between the trees, a proper smoker going since morning, enough food for 30 people, maybe 18 actual people. Linda loved hosting. She was genuinely good at it. I'll give her that. The yard looked beautiful. The ribs smelled extraordinary. Cora came with me. She'd been excited all week because Linda had a dog, a very old beagle named Sherman, who moved slowly and smelled like old carpet, and whom Cora loved with her whole heart. She'd brought Sherman a treat she'd picked out herself at the pet store, a specific jerky thing Sherman liked, and she was holding it in her hand on the drive over. It was a good afternoon. For a while. The toast happened at around 4:30. Linda stood up. Glass of white wine. The kind of smile that arrives before the face is ready for it. I just want to take a moment, she started. And the yard got quiet because Linda starting a toast is a gravitational event. This family means everything to me. Every person here is here because they belong here. She paused. She looked around the yard. Her eyes moved over me and Cora and moved on. But the movement was the message. And I want to raise a glass to the ones who make this family feel like home. Not the ones who show up with their kids, borrowing space, still trying to look important, but the ones who are actually part of this, the ones who belong. She smiled. She clinked her glass towards Simone. Simone clinked back. Half the yard laughed or raised their drinks. Cora was sitting next to me. She had Sherman in her lap. She looked up at me with her 8-year-old face, which is a very specific kind of face that has not yet learned to hide what it's thinking. And she said, very quietly, "Did she mean us, Daddy?" Something in my chest went cold and still. I looked at Simone. Simone was looking at her glass. I lifted my drink. I said, clearly, so everyone could hear, to the woman who just lost the transfer covering her car payment. The yard went so quiet you could hear the smoker. I put Cora on my hip. She wrapped her arms around my neck automatically, like she'd been waiting for the signal. I put her treat for Sherman on the table near him. I walked to the car without saying goodbye to anyone. In the car, Cora was quiet for a minute. Then she said, "Can we get Dairy Queen?" "Yes," I said. "We can absolutely get Dairy Queen." "The good one on Bardstown Road?" "The very good one," I said. We went. She got a blizzard. I sat across from her and watched her eat it and thought about what I was going to do next. Okay, so I need you to understand something about me before I tell you what I did. I am a veterinarian. I have spent 12 years reading animals, their stress signals, their behavioral patterns, their responses to environment. I notice things, I file things. And I have, through my clinic, a close and long-standing relationship with the Bluegrass Animal Rescue League, a shelter and sanctuary about 20 minutes from my practice, where I volunteer, donate, and occasionally provide pro bono medical care for their harder cases. The shelter does a thing, a fundraising thing, where major donors can sponsor an animal, not adopt. Sponsor, which means the animal gets named after you or after whoever you designate, and the shelter features them on their social media, their newsletter, their donation campaigns. Your name, their animal, their reach. I want to be very clear that I am a calm and methodical person. What I did next was calm and methodical, scaled magnificently to the situation. I called the shelter director, a woman named Greta, who has known me for 8 years and trusts my judgment completely. In retrospect, perhaps too completely. I told her I wanted to make a naming sponsorship donation, the specific tier that got social media features and the quarterly newsletter spotlight. That tier was $500. Wonderful, Greta said. Do you have an animal in mind, or do you want us to match you? I'd love for you to match me, I said. I want whoever you currently have that is the most, how do I put this? Personality forward. The one your staff talks about. A pause. Dorian, she said. Yes. Are you sure? Very. Because right now, that would be the rescue peacock. I did not know they had a rescue peacock. I want to be transparent about that. I had not planned for a peacock. But I will tell you that when Greta said the words rescue peacock, something in my soul said, yes. Obviously. Of course it's a peacock. Tell me about the peacock, I said. The peacock, who had arrived 6 weeks prior from a property dispute situation involving an estate in Shelby County, was, according to Greta, the most territorial animal we have ever housed. And we once had a cassowary. The peacock had chased 2 volunteers, dismantled a garden bed, and had developed what Greta called a proprietary relationship with the staff parking area, which meant she stood in it and screamed at cars. The screaming, Greta clarified, was the peacock's normal vocalization. It sounded, she said, like someone calling for help, but doing it wrong. What's her current name? I asked. We've been calling her Empress. I'd like to rename her Linda, I said. There was a long pause. The donation is $500, Greta said, carefully. I'll transfer it today. I transferred it that afternoon. Here's where I have to slow way down, because this is where it stopped being my story and became its own thing entirely. The shelter posted about Linda the rescue peacock 3 days later. The post was on their Facebook page, their Instagram, and their newsletter. The Facebook caption read, "Meet Linda, our newest named resident, sponsored by a generous supporter." Linda arrived 6 weeks ago from a rehoming situation and has been making herself very much at home. She's confident, vocal, and doesn't shy away from asserting her space. She has her own ideas about boundaries and isn't afraid to express them. Linda is not currently available for adoption. She's a sanctuary resident, but you can support her care through our monthly giving program. There were 4 photographs. In 3 of them, Linda the peacock was screaming. In one of them, she had her tail fully fanned, standing in the middle of the staff parking lot, and the perspective of the photo made it look like she was surveying a kingdom she had personally conquered. She looked magnificent, honestly. The post had been up for maybe 6 hours when Greta texted me, "Dorian, something is happening." What was happening was the post was being shared. A lot. Someone in a Louisville neighborhood Facebook group had shared it with the caption, "This peacock's energy is very relatable, please support." That got shared into a Kentucky humor page with 80,000 members. Someone in that group commented, "Linda said this is my parking lot, and you will not be asking follow-up questions." That comment got 1,400 likes. By the end of day 2, Linda the Rescue Peacock had her own unofficial fan account on Instagram. It was called @LindaThePeacock, and it had 3,000 followers. I genuinely did not plan for that part. Greta texted me at 9:15 p.m. The fan account is asking if Linda will do a meet and greet. I told them she does not do meet and greets. She does confrontations. They said that's fine. Then came the sub-story I absolutely did not anticipate. Someone shared the original shelter post into a group called Kentucky Bird Enthusiasts, a legitimate ornithology group, serious people, serious about birds. And one of the members, a retired professor named Gerald from Frankfurt, wrote a 600-word comment about the behavioral ecology of free-roaming peafowl and their tendency toward territorial domination of shared spaces. Gerald's comment was earnest and thorough and included 3 citations. It was also, accidentally, the most devastating character analysis of a human woman I have ever read about a bird. The phrase asserts hierarchical dominance through display and sustained vocalization rather than physical engagement was used. Twice, Gerald's comment got screenshotted. It circulated. I am not responsible for Gerald. I want to be on record about that. Linda Hayes, the human one, found out on a Thursday. Not from me, not from Simone, from her neighbor Carol, who was in the Kentucky Bird Enthusiasts group and had seen the post and the screenshot of Gerald's comment and had texted Linda a screenshot because Carol, by all accounts, is a complicated person who thought she was being friendly. My phone rang at 11:43 a.m. I was in the middle of a dental cleaning on a golden retriever. I let it go to voicemail, then again, then again. By the time I finished the cleaning, I had 9 missed calls from Linda and 4 from Simone, and 1 from a number I didn't recognize that turned out to be Wade, calling from a new phone, which meant this had escalated to the point where Wade was moved to action. Wade, who never calls anyone. The family group chat, which was called the Hayes Crew and which I had been added to 11 months earlier without being asked, exploded at approximately the same time. Linda's first message. I need someone to explain to me what is happening right now. Wade's response. Mom, I just saw. That's messed up. Simone's. Dorian, please call me. Then Linda again. That shelter is posting about an animal named after me and saying she screams at cars. Do you understand what I'm saying? She screams at cars. Then someone named Aunt Phyllis, who I had met once at Christmas for approximately 40 minutes. Linda, I am so sorry, honey. This is awful. Then Dot. Dot's message came in at 12:04 p.m. It was 4 words. She does look confident. I saved that screenshot. I have it still. Linda posted on Facebook that afternoon. The caption was, "Some people think it's funny to be cruel. I know who I am, and I know my worth. Prayers for those who need to tear others down to feel big." 46 of her friends reacted with the heart emoji. 11 people, I am not making this number up, commented with some version of what happened, because the post was vague enough to be interesting, but not specific enough to answer anything, which meant Linda had created a second round of conversation that she then had to manage privately, which I understand took most of her evening. Real mature. The fan account at Linda the Peacock posted a photo of Linda the Peacock at 6 p.m. with the caption, "I have heard about the drama and I have opinions." It gained 400 followers overnight. Greta called me on Friday morning. "Dorian," she said. She sounded like someone trying very hard to be professional. "The Peacock sponsorship has generated 17 new monthly donors. I need you to know that. I need you to sit with that." "I'm sitting with it," I said. Also, someone from the Courier Journal called about doing a feature. I had not planned for the Courier Journal. I want to be absolutely clear about that. Simone came to the house on Saturday. She sat at my kitchen table. She didn't look angry. She looked tired, in the specific way of someone who has been explaining the same thing to multiple people for 3 days and has run out of ways to explain it. "You named a peacock after my mother," she said. "A shelter peacock," I said, "for a $500 donation that supports animal welfare." "Dorian, I'm just being accurate." She screams at cars. "I know. Gerald wrote 600 words about her." I didn't plan Gerald. Simone pressed both hands flat on the table. She stared at them. "She said something awful at the barbecue. I know that. I know I laughed, and I shouldn't have laughed, and I have not stopped thinking about what Cora asked you in the car." Her voice went a little unsteady. "Cora asked you if Linda meant her." "Yeah," I said. "She's 8. I know. I should have said something. Right then. I should have put my glass down and said something." We sat with that for a minute. It was a heavy minute. "The car payment," I said. "I know. The $4,200. The dental thing I don't regret. But the fund." "I know, Dorian. I'm not a bank account," I said. "I'm a person you were supposed to be building something with." She looked up. Her eyes were red at the edges. "I know," she said, for the third time. And this one was different. This one had the weight of someone who'd known for longer than they'd admitted. The unexpected part came the following Tuesday. Dot called me. 81 years old, still driving herself, called me from her landline, she has a landline, which I respect, at 2 in the afternoon. She said, "Dorian, I want to tell you something." "Okay, Dot. I've been in this family for 60 years. I watched Linda do this to her first husband. I watched her do it to her second husband. I watched her do it to Wade his whole life, which is why Wade is the way he is, and that's sad, but it's true. Linda uses people. She's been doing it since she was 30, and she hasn't stopped." A pause. "You were the most useful person she'd found in a long time." I didn't say anything. "The peacock," Dot said, and I could hear, I am completely certain, a smile in her voice, controlled but present. That was specific. That was a specific kind of clarity. Another pause. "I want you to know I told Linda that if she didn't have a real conversation with you about the money and about what she said to that child, I was pulling out of the Christmas arrangement, which I fund entirely, which she knows." "Dot," I said, "you don't need to thank me. I'm 81. I've earned the right to say the thing." What did she say? She said I was being dramatic. A beat. She'll come around. She always does when the money shifts. She hung up. That's just how Dot ends calls. No goodbye, just done. I sat in my car in the clinic parking lot for a while. After that, Linda called me 10 days later. She did not apologize. Exactly. That would be too clean a story, and this is not a clean story. What she did was call and say, in her most office manager voice, that she wanted to clear the air, which is what people say when they want to perform accountability without actually practicing it. She said the barbecue comment was not meant the way it landed. She said she'd always respected what I brought to the family. She said Cora was a very bright child. I listened. I thanked her for calling. It wasn't enough. But it was something. The first something in 26 months. Simone and I are still engaged. That part surprises me sometimes when I say it out loud. But we are. We're in a different place. Not a fixed place, not a resolved place. More like a cleared place, the kind you get to after a storm, when you can finally see the actual ground. She's covering her own car payment. She had a hard conversation with Linda about the $300 monthly transfers, which apparently involved Linda crying and then being unusually quiet for 4 days, which Simone said had never happened before in her memory. We're in couples counseling, Wednesday evenings, 7 o'clock. We drive there separately because her schedule is tighter than mine on Wednesdays. We sit in the same room and say the real things. It's uncomfortable in the way that things that are actually working are sometimes uncomfortable. Are we a perfect couple? Not even close. Are we a more honest one than we were 2 months ago? Yes. Genuinely yes. Last week, Cora asked me if Linda was going to be at Thanksgiving. I said I didn't know yet. Cora thought about it. She was feeding Sherman the beagle, who was visiting because we were dog sitting for the weekend, which is a whole other story. I think Cora said, very carefully, in the way she talks when she's been thinking about something for a long time, I think she just doesn't know how to be happy for other people. My teacher says that's a learned thing, that you have to practice it. She's 8. She's 8 years old. I put my hand on top of her head. Yeah, Bug, I said. That's exactly right. Linda the Rescue Peacock is doing well, for the record. She has 7,200 followers on the fan account now. The Courier-Journal piece ran on a Wednesday and described her as a personality that commands a room without asking permission. Greta told me she's become the shelter's most effective fundraising asset, which means Linda the Peacock is, arguably, more financially productive than some people I know. The shelter sent me a thank you card. It had a photo of her on the front. Full tail display, parking lot. The expression of a creature who has decided this space is hers. She looked exactly right.